right, so moving into 5.2, now we're talking about rates and unit pricing, which I find to be a very useful section of this course because you can use unit pricing to help you in the grocery store to find the best deal. So a little bit of vocabulary before we get started. We have denominate numbers. That's just a number that has a unit attached to it. So for example, 5 feet or 50 liters. Both have a unit of measurement. We're dealing with feet or we're dealing with liters. A rate then is a comparison of two numbers that have units. So for example, we might get 20 miles per gallon in a vehicle. Or if you're more modern than I am in the way you think about mileage, the more Canadian, I suppose, or metric way to think about it is liters per 100K. So maybe you get 5.8 liters for every 100K you drive. So those are examples of rates. A unit rate is a simplified rate that's per one unit. And so often we use these when we're talking about money. So you might have, your apples might cost you $1.29 per pound, or you might have potatoes for $5. Well, that's actually a lot per kilogram, isn't it? Let's say, even with today's prices, let's say $2 per kilogram of potatoes or something like that. Okay. Mixed numbers are decimals, and decimals are preferred when finding a unit rate because your denominator is going to be a 1, right? We've got per 1 pound, per 1 kilogram, per whatever unit we're dealing with. And so the top number ends up being a mixed number or a frac or a decimal number sometimes. Okay, to figure out a unit rate, we want to simplify the ratio to the lowest terms, and we want to include the units of measure. So actually, you know what? This is more for a rate, because once you get to a unit rate, it's going to be per 1 gallon, like you see for this bottom example. But if you have just a rate, for example, this top one here, we have 12 feet per 16 seconds. We're going to simplify that. Both of these numbers are divisible by 4. Notice here we can't cancel out our units because they're different. We don't have feet over feet this time. We have feet per second. So the units have to stay, but we can divide the top and bottom by 4 to get 3 feet per 4 seconds. So that means 3 feet per second. To make this truly a unit rate, you have to write it kind of like they have here. That's the same thing as 3/4 feet per second, which is the way they've written it here. This next example then is a little bit easier when we're thinking about unit rates. Let's look at it more carefully. So here we've got 200 miles per 10 gallons. I'm going to divide both of those by 10 to get 20 miles per every 1 gallon. So this would be 20 miles per gallon, and that is a true unit rate. So if we were asked to express these as unit rates, okay, 250 miles per 10 hours. We want to simplify. Here we can divide both by 10, which knocks a 0 off of both of them, to give us 25 miles per hour or per 1 hour. Okay, next one. We have $60,000 per 2 years. Both of those are divisible by 2. So our unit rate here would be $30,000 per every year. Okay, let's do a sports example. Randy Johnson had 320 strikeouts in 280 innings. We want to know his strikeout per inning rate. And so sometimes it's helpful to write what we're looking for here. So I'm just going to say we're looking for strikeouts on the top because that was mentioned first. So strikeout per inning rate. And so here we have 320 strikeouts per 280 innings. Now we want to simplify this. So if we're going to simplify this, I'm going to start by just taking out the 10 because I can divide both of them by 10 by knocking off a 0. And then I can see both of those are divisible by 4. Go ahead and do a chart for your GCF. If you don't see that right away, that's fine. And so I get 8 strikeouts per 7 innings. And so that is his strikeout per inning rate in the lowest terms or simplest terms. Okay. The next one, we have somebody who scored 702 points over 31 games. And we want to know her points per game rate. So here they want per game or per every 1 game. So we've got, so maybe I'll just write that we want points per game. And so we've got 702 points per every 31 games or per 31 games. And so what we're going to do here is do the division on our calculators to get a decimal answer. It's told us to round to the nearest 10th. So on your calculators, do 702 divided by 31. And I get 22.645 something. So rounded to the nearest 10th, then I've got 22.6. And so that's points per 1 game or points per game. And so this is a true unit rate because it's per 1 game. And this is very useful because once we have unit rates like this, now we know she's scoring an average of 22.6 points per game, right? So in some games, she's going to score more. In others, she's not going to score as many or maybe none at all. But overall, her kind of typical score is 22.6 points in a game. We can use this because now we can compare among different people. We can see what each of their points per game rates are. And that's what we'll do in our next section.